All right, so last week, Joe Biden called Russian President Vladimir Putin a killer on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos interviewing. And a few days later, he called Xi Jinping, the leader of China, an autocrat. And he said that he doesn't have one democratic bone in his body. Of course, Joe Biden, the man who received the most votes in U.S. history, honk, honk, understands exactly what democracy is, right? Okay. So anyway, after all the stuff that went down the last couple of weeks and all the insults that Biden hurled at the leaders of Russia and China, Biden has decided to invite these two men to a virtual climate summit. From Zero Hedge, Biden warmly invites killer Putin and autocrat Xi to a major climate summit. It was only a week and a half ago that President Joe Biden agreed in an ABC interview that Vladimir Putin is a killer and that the Russian leader doesn't have a soul. Perhaps Biden forgot his own assessment. Perhaps another senior moment. After all, what person in their right mind would invite someone they believe to be a killer or murderer to a cooperative summit where there will be plenty of rubbing elbows and hoped for close coordination? Well, and virtual summit, of course, because we all know that Biden can't possibly travel anywhere, or at least he can't travel maybe, I don't know, an hour or two out of his immediate circle. We all know that. So expect many, many, many more virtual summits to take place. Of course, they're going to blame it on you know what as the reason that Biden can't go anywhere. But over the next year or two, or however long Biden lasts, we're going to be seeing virtual summits pretty much all the time. So Matt Lee from the AP tweeted, officials, President Biden invites Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping to first big global climate talks of his administration. So there it is. Killer Putin is indeed confirmed to have been invited, according to the White House statement. President Joe Biden on Friday said that Vladimir Putin of Russia and Xi Jinping of China are invited to the Global Leaders Climate Summit the administration is hosting in April, CNBC reported. In the statement, the major climate meeting is scheduled to run April 22 through April 23rd and will be held remotely, so perhaps at least Biden doesn't have to be in the same physical room with killer Putin. At this point, it's now become impossible for Biden to meet with Putin. With Xi, okay, you called Putin a killer, you called Xi an autocrat. You could probably squirm a meeting with Xi, though, after the beatdown that China gave Blinken, the Secretary of State in Alaska. I don't know. I think that door may be closing as well for the Biden White House. So anyway, here's the exchange between George Stephanopoulos and Joe Biden, where he called Putin a killer.
Putin authorized operations during the election to denigrate you, support President Trump, undermine our elections, divide our society. What price must he pay?
He will pay a price. We had a long talk, he and I. I know him relatively well. And the conversation started off, I said, I know you and you know me. If I establish this occurred, then be prepared.
You said you know he doesn't have a soul.
I did say that to him, yes. And his response was, we understand one another. I wasn't being a wise guy. I was alone with him in his office. That's how it came about. It was when President Bush had said, I've looked in his eyes and saw a soul. I said, looked in your eyes, and I don't think you have a soul. And looked back at me and said, we understand each other. Look, most important thing dealing with foreign leaders, in my experience, and I've dealt with an awful lot of them over my career, is just know the other guy.
So you know Vladimir Putin, you think he's a killer?
Mm-hmm, I do.
So what price must he pay?
The price he's going to pay, well, you'll see shortly. I'm not going to, by the way, we ought to be able, that trite expression, walk and chew gum at the same time. There are places where it's in our mutual interest to work together. That's why I renewed the START agreement with him.
Putin.
So if you guys believe that Biden was alone with Putin and said, you don't have a soul, then I've got a bridge to sell you. Who says that? That's ridiculous. Of course, you got to remember one thing. Biden's lies, he probably believes now. I mean, Biden is a notorious liar. And he makes up these fictions in his head, these corn pop stories, and he actually believes them, I think, over time. So he probably believes that he said all of this. Of course, he didn't. We all know that he didn't sit with Putin alone, and he didn't say to him, you don't have a soul, and all that stuff. I mean, we know that that's ridiculous. What person sits alone with another person and says you don't have a soul? It's absurd. Doesn't make any sense at all. But George Stephanopoulos, the whole thing was scripted, and he lobbed him that question. And of course, Biden said the scripted response. And okay, so now you have this sound bit where tough Scranton Joe, is calling bad Putin a killer. That's the narrative they want to get out there. Of course, we all know it's an absolute ridiculous lie. It's a complete fantasy. But Biden, let's go back to the article. But then Biden attempted to inject just a slight amount of distance over the personal invitation to the man he believed to be a killer. The president told reporters that he hasn't directly invited Putin or Xi, but said the leaders know they're invited to the summit, an event the U.S. is hosting to advance global efforts to reduce climate change, fossil fuel emissions. The White House later published a list of 40 world leaders invited to the summit, including Xi and Putin. The White House said it's all about taking global action to cut carbon emissions, thus the need to invite some of the world's top climate change sufferers, do-gooders, and backsliders, as the Associated Press had eloquently put it. It remains unclear if either Russia or China will accept the invitation. President Xi's presence could also be awkward, given during Biden's first ever presidential press conference days ago, he noted China's leader doesn't have a democratic bone in his body after previously calling him an autocrat. Still waiting for the debate. Yeah, Russian President Vladimir Putin reacted to Joe Biden's calling him a killer by challenging Biden to take part in a conversation with him broadcast live online. That would be great to watch. Boy, would that be good to watch, but we all know that Biden will never take that up. The U.S. and China rival sides have accused the other of being the globe's worst polluter in recent years. And judging by how the tumultuous Alaska summit went, the upcoming climate conference could be yet another venue, an opportunity for more finger-pointing and insult hurling between Beijing and Washington. Okay. All right, guys, that's the video. That's the Biden White House inviting Putin, inviting Xi to a virtual summit, and then trying to kind of not walk back the invite, but water down the invitation. A virtual summit on climate change, who cares? If it's not in person, to me, it's not a summit, it's not a conference, it's a nothing. It's a FaceTime call. Anyway, if it's not face-to-face, it's meaningless. And we all know that we're not going to see Joe Biden traveling anywhere around the world for a face-to-face meeting because he simply can't. And boy, would I pay money to see Joe Biden in the same room, like physically the same room with Putin and Xi. It would be wow. Wow, would I pay money for that? All right, guys, that's the video. Take care.